This Spanish island is sick of tourists, and honestly, I don't blame them.
The Spanish island of Mallorca made headlines in summer 2024 for protests against over-tourism, some telling all tourists to go home. But the flip side is an island with up to 45% of the economy relying on the tourist industry and a third of jobs in the sector. So I visited to find out how we can visit Spanish islands more sustainably. I visited Mallorca as part of a DIY cruise. I took 4 ferries in 4 nights across the Mediterranean in a cheaper and more responsible alternative to traditional cruising. Previously, I took a ferry from Barcelona to Mallorca and arrived in Mallorca at 5 in the morning.
First ferry is complete. It was about 8 hours in the end. I slept from about 10:30 till 5 a.m, which, considering it was a very deep sleep, is quite good for me. So I feel pretty refreshed and ready to explore Mallorca. Let's go. There was a bus stop at the port itself, but the buses don't start till 7. So I'm currently walking to another bus stop, which is a 10-minute walk away. And hopefully I'll be able to jump on a bus there. There doesn't seem to really be a pavement. You don't get this on a cruise, do you? Bus stop is just up there, and there should be a bus in about 10 minutes. I'm back at the port. Turns out those buses in Palma you can only pay with cash. I think I might try and get a taxi. I just looked online, it should cost €14. I think there's taxis down there. If I'd remembered to take cash out, this would have been really easy. At the port itself, there was only Euronet ATMs, and one of my top Europe travel tips is to never use Euronet ATMs. Their conversion fees are ridiculous. They also charge a hefty fee. So I ended up taking a taxi. It was €14, very quick. I would have got there the same amount of time on the bus, but never mind.
Bag stored, I actually left the city for a few hours and headed to a lesser explored part of Mallorca.
I've just taken a bus around half an hour from Palma along the coastline, and I'm here to go on a kayaking activity.
I wanted to see what a low emission activity near Palma looked like. And kayaking around the coastline, exploring hidden beaches and doing a little bit of coast steering seemed like just the ticket. I'd put this activity on Get Your Guide, and it was a great 3-hour excursion where I really felt like I got to grips with Mallorcan nature. Activity complete, I headed back to Palma to see what the city was like in September.
While Mallorca is quite overrated, especially in the summer, I don't think that many tourists actually come into the city. Actually, last time I visited Palma, I was here with the tourism board, and they were quite keen to encourage people to come for a city break, especially in the winter months. So let's have a little walk around Palma de Mallorca and see what it's got to offer.
I quickly found out that my preconceptions about this city were completely wrong. It was heaving.
I am having a bit of a repeat of yesterday. Everywhere for lunch is rammed. So I was going over to Bar España, which is somewhere I remember getting tapas before. I remember they had very good veggie tapas, but it's too busy, it's got a queue outside. And I really don't want to end up eating in like one of the tourist trap restaurants. So I've got an ice cream to keep me going. I'm gonna eat this and power through. Palma is busy. When I came here in November, it was not like this. And I remember walking around thinking, oh, this city's lovely. This is a bit stressful, to be honest. I can see why locals are getting fed up. Let's pop off for a quick ad break. I want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Saily. So some of the ways that I try to be a more responsible traveller are to translate things into the local language, find hidden gems in whatever area I'm in, and look up responsible travel tips on the go. But to do all of these, I need a reliable internet connection. Saily is a new eSIM app that's run by Nord Security. It provides you with eSIM access in over 150 countries. This means you don't have to have the hassle of finding a SIM card in another country. With Saily, you just download the app, install the SIM card, and then you are ready to go. So whether you land in Europe or Asia, you'll be instantly connected and you don't have to rely on Wi-Fi. Saily works with iOS and Android, and they offer 24/7 support. Plus, if you find out that your device does not work with SIM cards, then don't worry. They'll give you 100% refund. I find the Saily interface so much easier to use than other eSIM apps. Plus, it has very competitive rates. And to save you even more money, you can use the code Claire to get 5% off of your first eSIM. Just click on the link in the description to make the most of this fantastic offer. So download the Saily app today and see what I'm talking about. And I am standing, well, underneath really, the Cathedral of Mayorca, or the Sede de Mallorca as it's otherwise known. So this is a landmark of the capital city, and I don't really think it needs any more tourists, but I do also think that a lot of tourists come to Mallorca and maybe don't come into Palma and have a little look around its cultural and historical buildings. So the cathedral dates back to the 13th century, although it took about 300 years to build. It's obviously the biggest place of worship in Mallorca, but it's actually most famous for its beautiful rose-coloured stained glass window. And this stained glass window, twice a year there's this strange phenomenon where the light catches it in such a way, it's called the disco ball, Palma disco ball or something like that, and it creates this glittering light in the cathedral. It's meant to be really, really spectacular. I believe that's in February and November if you're ever here then. I think when I was here last time, I think I was a couple of days too late, unfortunately. And just opposite the cathedral is the Palacio Real de Almudena. This is nowadays the official residence of the Spanish royal family in Mallorca. However, it's had quite a long history. The castle was Roman in origin, then it was Moorish when the Moors were here, and then in the early 14th century it was made into a palace by James the King of Mallorca. Later on that century, Mallorca was absolved into Aragon, which is a province of mainland Spain, and then ultimately it was absolved into the country of Spain, which was ultimately formed of all of its provinces. So nowadays it is underneath the Spanish crown, but it did used to be under the Mallorcan crown when that wasn't the Mallorcan crown. I don't think it particularly wants for tourists. I'm guessing that it does see a fair few holidaymakers going through, although I know in November it was very quiet. Right now there is not a queue to go into the palace. There is a queue to go into the cathedral, but it's not huge. It's interesting comparing Palma with Barcelona, because my opinion is Barcelona as a city is heaving with tourists, and a lot of the kind of protests against tourism in Barcelona are due to going to all the city attractions and all the mainstream city attractions, I should say. However, with Palma, Mallorca, it's not so much Palma the city, but it does feel the influx of all the tourists elsewhere. Like, I do think maybe quite a lot of tourists just come in to get food or come in the day and poke around a bit. I reckon later on Palma will feel quieter. There is also a big cruise ship just outside, so that definitely adds to the influx of tourists as well. I guess in November there wasn't really any cruises either. I remember when we were here last time, we sat out there and had a drink, and we could sit outside. Although saying that, for the majority of the time we were in Mallorca, it was awful weather in November, but the first few days were quite nice. This is it, this is the Palma skyline. And this is the Plaza Mayor, very typical Spanish square. I remember last time I was here, they were putting the Christmas lights up here. It's crazy, this is only sort of 2 months' time when all of this happens, but it just feels like another city. I do love the city of Palma. I think it is such a beautiful part of Mallorca Island, although there are some gorgeous historical towns elsewhere in the country as well. It is very busy still in September, however.
I walked back to the bus station, popped into a couple of churches, but I still hadn't eaten. But luckily, I knew a place that might be able to help.
Oh, 100 Montaditos has saved the day, thankfully. So 100 Montaditos is not a hidden gem, but it's also not a tourist trap. It's a local restaurant, and it's basically a Spanish restaurant. They do tapas and like small plates, and they do Montaditos, which are like small sandwiches. Most things are around €1, although I think it's gone up a little bit with inflation, but basically things are very, very cheap. So I usually always come here at least once when I'm in Spain. It is busy outside, and I'd rather eat outside if I can, but there might not be space, but there's plenty of space inside if not.
After my food, I took a bus to the north of the island, which is where I was catching my next ferry from. The bus journey to the north of Mallorca is only an hour, but this bus was heaving, and I had to stand for about 45 minutes of it. But all was well when I arrived in the beautiful village of Aluda.
And I've made it to Aluda. It is lovely here. We've got pastel coloured buildings lined in terraces, bougainvillea, and then we've got the beautiful St. Home Church, which looks like a mini Palma Cathedral. Aluda, I presume it's pronounced, is on the north coast of Mallorca, but like lots of Mallorcan towns, the actual town sits a little bit inland, and then there is Port d'Aluda, which sits on the coastline. The Romans apparently entered Mallorca through the Port d'Aluda, and nowadays there is a Roman site, Pollentia, very close to here. Aluda's name has Arabic origin. It originates from the Arabic words al-Qudja, which means on the hill, which is a nod to the town's and island's Moorish connections. It was also attacked multiple times by Barbary pirates in the 16th century, and the harbour was then built to strengthen it. So interesting little town. I also just googled Aluda and came up saying, is Aluda a party town? This does not look like a party town at all. Apparently there is a strip somewhere. I'm guessing that is probably down by the beach, and where I'm going, the Port d'Aluda, is actually the other side, so it is obviously by the beach, but so it's like a peninsula. The port's on one side and the beaches are on the other. So I don't think I'll see the strip, unfortunately, but I'll probably be alright not going there. There's a cat there staring very intently at me, wondering what I'm doing. This is markedly more quiet than Palma was earlier today. I think a lot of these towns are day trip destinations and a lot of tourists are staying in beach hotels, so I think by the evenings they do quieten down quite a bit. This church, the Church of St. Jaume, it's nowhere near as old as Palma Cathedral. It dates back to around the 17th century. But inside it's quite interesting. There's lots of different areas. There's even a bit where you can go up some steps and stand next to Jesus on the cross. And Pollentia, the Roman city, is literally just over here. Go and have a little look. Probably won't pay to go in, but let's see what's it saying. Okay, so this Roman city, Pollentia, not Pollentia, which is another village close by. This was founded in 123 BC, very easy to remember, and it signals the start of urbanisation in Mallorca. During the Roman period, it was the most important city in the Balearics. Let's go and have a little look. This is free parking. Doesn't say anything about entry. I mean, right now Pollentia just looks like a big car park. I'm not really at all sure how I get into them, but I'm guessing that they wouldn't be free anyway, so I think I'll give that one a miss for now and head back into the town of Aluda. It is good though. I just had another thought about tourism. Thinking about tourism, it is worth noting one of the big benefits of tourism is that it does help to preserve historical sites that might not get preserved otherwise, because visiting funds them. Mallorca is a very, very historic place. It has a lot of history. I mean, all of Spain has a huge amount of history, and I think when visiting here, by visiting some of the historic places as well as enjoying the beaches and the sunshine, of course, I think in that way you can do another little bit to help visit it responsibly. I did also read online that Aluda is one of the most visited towns in Mallorca, so I'm not claiming for a minute that I found somewhere that is off the beaten track, but I did want to know, what is your top off the beaten track Mediterranean destination? Because I mean, mine will be somewhere in North Africa probably, Algiers or Tunis, but I'd love to know yours. That is stunning. Got the narrow streets, lovely buildings, and then the mountains as a backdrop. Stunning. Found the tourists. I'm joking, I know I'm a tourist myself, but it does go to show that if you ever are somewhere busy and you want to go somewhere a bit quieter, usually all you have to do is turn down a few roads, and then you might find that there are a lot less people.
So should we still be visiting Mallorca? It's not really for me to say, especially as I was only there for one day. But I will say that I can completely understand why there were over-tourism protests in Mallorca, but the island does clearly rely somewhat on the tourist industry. However, we can do better by just being more responsible travellers. Maybe that's visiting at quieter times of year, going to different areas of the island, learning the language, or taking some time to experience the local culture.
Part of the reason why I decided to do a DIY cruise rather than a traditional cruise was because I did want to make up my own schedule and I didn't want to be part of the over-tourism that cruises bring. So on that note, I am off on my next cruise boat, my next ferry, which will take me back over the Mediterranean, slightly north to the south of France. So I hope I'll see you in my next videos. Bye!